Hello, everyone. Welcome to Astrology as a Healing Guide. My name is Dr. Sobyl, Bunis, and I am the founder of the Emotional Clearinghouse. And today we are having another episode of Astrology as a Healing Guide, and it's called The Spirit of Scorpio. And of course, I'm here with my very good friend and my dear respected colleague, Beth McDonald. Beth is waving from Hawaii, by the way. And one of us is in a tropical paradise. One of us is a tropical paradise, and one of us is in, a wintry paradise. Everyone, welcome. And if you're a Scorpio, of course, come on in. If you know and love a Scorpio or would like to know and love a Scorpio, maybe you're a family member or a friend, also you are welcome. And as Beth has taught me well over the course of this series of conversations we've been having, almost all of us have some influence of almost every sign in our charts. So you're bound to learn something today about someone you care about, someone you'd like to care about, or yourself. So today we're going to do it a little differently than we've done in the past. If you're really interested in more of the historical aspect of astrology that Beth has gone into deeply in our other programs, you can find that on YouTube, and we'll talk about that later. But today we're going to dive right into Scorpio. We're going to talk about, after we do a little introduction about ourselves, we're going to talk about Scorpio, the attributes of Scorpio. What are the challenges that they experience, and how can we help them deal with those challenges, become more into balance, become healthier, happier, more fulfilled? So that's in your seatbelts, everyone. Here we go. So again, my name is Dr. Sobyl Bunis. I'm the founder of the Emotional Clearinghouse. I've been a holistic family doctor, chiropractor for 35 years. And of that 35 years, I've been really, really fortunate to be trained in what we call emotional healing or emotional clearing techniques. And being a chiropractor, knowing how to adjust the body 100 different ways, also knowing nutrition and functional medicine, all very valuable. But what I learned doing emotional clearing work is that it's very often the key that is the very thing that unlocks the final piece of healing for people. It's so critical, and it's something that's been ignored for years. And then 30 years ago, I met Beth, and ever since then, we have been collaborating for your benefit, for the benefit of our clients. And the reason we've been collaborating is because Beth is a gifted astrologer, a gifted psychic, a gifted business consultant, and I'm the holistic chiropractor with emotional healing skills. And so we have been able to bring to bear all of her wisdom and my skills into working collaboratively with clients to help them achieve what Beth would call peak performance, and where I would say just fulfilling your potential, having the life of your dreams, everything that you want and deserve. So a couple of years ago, right around the time the pandemic hit, I decided that I wanted to find a way to bring this work into the world where it would be more easy and accessible and affordable for people. So I developed the Emotional Clearinghouse, which is at emotionalclearinghouse.com. And when people go there, they can find that there are programs that they can take and do on their own, the privacy of their own home. And it's way less expensive than doing a private session. However, it's still available for private sessions, especially for people who've had, either they're in crisis, which Beth also works with a lot of people in crisis. So people in crisis, people with a ton of abuse in their history, and also people who want to work with whole family systems. These are the reasons to see me for private sessions. And so that's the story. Today, we're going to really jump in deeply with Scorpio. I'm very excited. Beth, I'm passing it over to you for a beautiful introduction, and then we'll dive right in. Here she is, Beth McDonald.
Awesome. Thank you, Sobyl. I started as a business consultant in the late 80s. And one of the things I noticed was that I could write the best press release or the best marketing plan or the best business plan for people. But if they couldn't show up, if they couldn't own it, if they couldn't step into it, then it was useless or nowhere near as useful as we envisioned, we intended. And it became very clear to me early on that I needed some way to address that and to make people okay with it, because the reality is anybody who's studied psychology will tell you that current clinical thought is that only 10% of our behavior and anything that we do or say comes out of the realms of the conscious, unless there's a lot of work done, like delving in that scorpionic way to the deepest depths. And that's part of why meeting Sobyl was an answered prayer. It gave me a way to normalize for people what they were going through, and then give them the support they needed, so that the other 90% of stuff that was coming out, that was driving their behavior from our behavior from the unconscious and subconscious levels, wouldn't be so damaging, and we wouldn't be so blindsided by it so much. Like, they call it the unconscious for a reason. A lot of times, especially in a crisis, it's like it's like we suddenly wake up and realize, like, oh wow, I missed a lot of stop signs and yellow lights, and there was just a lot of things that I did not see because I couldn't. And like, that's human. And a lot of us also really struggle with that, like how difficult it is to be in a body on this planet. And so the reason for emotional clearing is not because of a pathology, or not because you're bad and wrong. I can't say that enough. The reason for emotional clearing is to make your life on this planet more comfortable and less painful and expensive. Less painful and expensive. I'm all over that. So again, meeting Sobyl was an answered prayer, because it gave me more tools to use to help people. And then with the astrological piece, I could shorten the healing process. You didn't have to spend hours and hours and hours dredging stuff up with a therapist using the kinesiology, the muscle testing. It's like laser surgery. It's very quick. We can create a list of things for Sobyl to explore. And there's always some meat and potatoes there. There's always something else that she finds. And it's a really powerful way to make your life more comfortable. And then, you know, again, it's a powerful tool that a lot of us turn to on a semi-regular basis, at least a couple times annually, when something goes south or something doesn't go exactly the way you planned, or you get surprised by someone else's trauma and you want to love them better, but you don't know how, or something's clearly in the way of you expressing the love you have for another human soul. So I can't say enough about this. I love the connection. I love the work we're able to do and the difference we're able to make for people. And so with that said, the last thing I want to just remind the viewers is, if you have questions, type them in, because then we'll see them and we can answer your questions directly, because we know what we want to talk about, but ultimately this is all about you guys. And if there's specific things we can cover that will be helpful for you, definitely let us know.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Beautiful. And I want to say something you just said triggered a thought in me, which is, you know, I've had the privilege of being, you know, in a community of doctors and practitioners who know emotional healing work. And from the very beginning, we always worked on each other. I have a tremendous amount of work on myself, and I still get it. And I just had a session this week. Something came up, and I went to my friend, and then I wrote Randy. I said, "Hey, calm down."
Yeah.
If you're living a life that is really intentional and aimed at spiritual expansion, then you're going to come up against another layer and another layer and another layer. I think growth is an ongoing process for a lifetime if we're really living a conscious life. And maybe that's not for everybody, but that's who I've been since I was really young. And I didn't know it until years later when I went, oh yeah, I was kind of up to this all along. And so even people such as myself and Beth, we get the help we need. We're not sitting up here on some high place saying, you know, we never know. We all need help. And, you know, I had a client years ago come to me, she with her husband, and I think I worked with them maybe separately and then as a couple, which I love doing. And she told me later they got in the car to go home. They had driven like a couple hours to come see me in Santa Barbara. And she turned to her husband and said, well, that saved us about 15 grand. And
yes.
And I realized, you know, therapy's wonderful. I mean, I love therapy, and it's
important. Everybody should do at least some.
Right.
Because there's things you get there. Yeah.
Right. I had a phenomenal person take me through that. It was wonderful, but it's limited in how far it can go. And what Beth is doing using her gifts and what I'm doing, we're using our ability to read the energy field. And so we have access to information that is deeper than most therapy can go.
Right.
So, anyway,
Right.
it's very exciting to be here again. And now Scorpio, I'm so excited about Scorpio. And
Yeah.
are we ready to dive in? Because I want to bring up
Yeah.
point number one. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so here we go. So Beth sends me, every time we do another episode, she sends me pages and pages of wonderful, wonderful notes. And she always sends me a list of what she calls the generic attributes of Scorpio, of the sign. And she's taught me that every sign internalizes childhood trauma differently.
Yeah.
And she taught me if Scorpio has been traumatized, particularly, they come in, they end up needing a lot of power and control. And then they get, so listen up, if this sounds like you, they get angry when their needs aren't met. Oh my God, I'm thinking of so many kids I've worked with over the years who just, the second they don't get their needs met, they're out of control. And what Beth taught me is that they will lash out and be very, very unconscious about how their behavior is affecting others. This is one of the generic attributes of Scorpio. So I was immediately attracted to what she called the right use of power. And I realized that there were two big points that I wanted to make about that and then pass it over to Beth. And one was that when I looked at this idea of the right use of power, and I looked at this list of strong negative emotions and life lessons that Scorpios have to deal with, it seemed to me that the strength of the emotions was like power out of control. Like there was so much power in the negativity of the emotions, number one. And number two, so many of those powerful negative emotions were being aimed at people. So I'm going to take a moment and read from the list because I think it's an intense list. So this is what happens when a Scorpio is out of balance. Being overly fearful, coercive, compulsive, cruel, destructive, distrustful, domineering. That one's going to come up a lot. Hostile, intense, jealous, manipulative. Let's see, opinionated, paranoid,
willful.
And then violent, vengeful, vindictive, unforgiving. And I thought, wow, that is a powerful list of negative emotions, and it's aimed at people. So one of the things from my perspective of working with people doing emotional clearing that I shared with Beth the other day, and then she's going to get into a more deep understanding of it. I've seen a lot of children who were traumatized in childhood in a way that caused them to internally repress all their emotions. So they were living in a circumstance where it just wasn't safe. It wasn't okay. There were a million different reasons why it wasn't okay. So all of their emotions became internalized. And then as adults, when they got triggered or when they found themselves in a place that was more safe for expressing emotions, those emotions came out powerfully, negatively, unconsciously, with a huge amount of force. So that's one of my experiences with this. And the other one is that, and Beth taught me this one, that the powerful emotions, I thought maybe it was protective, but Beth said, no, it's really about, again, dominating others and gaining power and control. So that was the first piece I was really attracted to. That's my perspective on it. And now I would love Beth to get into it and really share with you the depth of her understanding about Scorpio, power, and control. All right?
Aloha. That is awesome. That is fantastic. Yeah. Yeah. The thing I want to start with, again, is that each sign has a higher octave and a lower octave. On a good day, if you're actualized and integrated, your behavior and your superpowers, your ability to be a superhero, is going to look like this. And for Scorpio, they are the strongest. They are the most powerful. They are the most ambitious. And they are the most spiritual and all the water signs are super spiritual, but with Scorpio, their ability they have a unique superpower ability to handle the darkness and the light of the universe. Like in the Buddhist tradition, the yin and the yang symbol, they believe that the good in the world is equal to the bad in the world. And most of us struggle, most of us who are not as endowed with actualized Scorpio, struggle with that. It's really hard, especially if you consider yourself a spiritual person and you spend a lot of your life trying to be closer to God and your fellow man and the organizing forces of the universe. And they have a unique capacity. Buddhism isn't the only one. It's the one we're all the most familiar with. Other religions, especially some of the ancient ones, believed that it was 51-49. There was only a teeny little bit more good in the universe than bad, which is why we hang in there, right? It's why we do this. Please tell me that's the deal, you know? And so an actualized Scorpio can accept that and deal with that better than anybody else. And that's their superpower. And when they're actualized and integrated, they can help other folks along to deal with that. And that's the upside. And that's part of why Scorpio also rules politics. A real actualized integrated Scorpio is a really good leader, a shepherd, a steward, a master, the teacher of others, because they have the right use of power and they've made peace with the universe, with that existential dilemma of, if God is good and God loves me, why is the world so difficult? And why is it so hard for me or others, or you know, why is there suffering? And so on a good day, Scorpios are just going to rock that. And on a bad day, their life lesson for an unactualized, unintegrated Scorpio is that Buddhist tenet. It's one of the eightfold path, the 8 organizing theories of Buddhism, and it's the right use of power, where you're learning how to have power in a righteous way that benefits others and not just you. And what gets in the way of that is always one of two things. Actually, I want to say it differently. It's one of two things. It's pretty much always anger at something. And then there's a subcategory of that anger, or a parallel category of not getting their needs met, not getting what they feel they need, want, or deserve. And Scorpio, the downside of Scorpio is they have an unparalleled ability to exact revenge rather than to ground. Like, that is a huge life lesson for Scorpio when they're upset, is to like ground, center, and then use appropriate language to see if you can compromise or negotiate or create a win-win where you can get your needs met. But it often, especially if they don't get the right support as young children, you know, by the time they get to be adults, it's formidable and it is a force to be reckoned with. And so, and again, everybody has Scorpio somewhere. It's really helpful to find out where it is for you, even if you don't have a Scorpio sun, moon, or rising, the obvious things. Is that enough on that? Or is there something I missed?
I love it. And I'm wondering if you could, or maybe between the two of us, we could look at where we think this comes from, specifically in childhood.
Oh, good.
Soul level, or right?
Yeah.
Like what Scorpio, like a Scorpio child, what are the circumstances that would create this imbalance in expression?
Oh my gosh. Now, one of the things that is super hard for us as humanity, we're so much better at it than we've ever been, but we still struggle with it, especially in this country and certain cultures. It's raising children appropriately. you know, the percentages of women who are, or females who are, well, and it's everybody, but they say it's more women than men, current clinical research. If a child is repeatedly abused verbally, physically, sexually, if they're neglected, then their needs are not getting met, and they at some point will struggle more than others. They're going to be less likely to internalize it in ways that like a Virgo would, and or a Pisces, and just completely shut down. They're only going to shut down a little bit, and then something's going to set them off, and they're going to blow like a volcano. And so like that's one of the biggest pieces. Another piece we see a lot, both of us, and we've talked about this, is that for spiritual people, they can really struggle with anger when they're trying to live a good life and be a righteous person. And if things go wrong, then it's incendiary. It can be pretty massive. And in both of those cases, you know, when Sobyl and I work together, or when other practitioners, you know, are involved, there's always a huge emphasis for everybody, but especially for Scorpios, in understanding what went south, what went wrong, what didn't go right for you, literally from conception to the present time, so that you can heal those wounds, reparent yourself, reorient yourself, so that there's a new foundation for you to stand on. But one of the things that Sobyl's really good at with the kinesiology, and that I also do with past life regressions, is that we can go back to the womb, you know, because often there's trauma in the womb. We can also go back to the space between the most recent lifetime and this one, especially the time right before conception, when you were dialing in and committing to what you were coming back to and with and for, you know, and then of course after that, you know, or past lives before that. Often there is recurring trauma, especially spiritual trauma, that really needs to get addressed.
I think the in utero trauma is so fascinating, and it's such a huge part of what I've discovered over the years and worked with over the years. And sometimes it's as direct as being oversensitive to the mother's emotional state or the father's emotional state, because as a developing child, you don't have boundaries yet, and you're literally you're stewing in mother's emotional spiritual stew. You're really in her world. And so children, a lot of times we end up doing emotional clearing on the in utero sensitivity to or dad's emotions. And then the other big one that comes up, I think we've mentioned this in different programs as well, is that a very significant percentage of pregnancies begin as twins.
Right.
You know, and one of and even in families where no twins have been born, a lot of pregnancies begin as twins, and then usually within that first month, one of those twins dies, and the twin tissue is either expelled from the mother's body, broken down and absorbed back into her body, or in rare circumstances, it breaks down and is absorbed into the surviving twin's body. But the trauma from that is massive. And talk about a lack of control and a lack of power to have these two souls present, and to lose that soul and not understand why, and to then have all this interpretation inside that surviving twin of what that meant, that the twin soul left. And so those children can be born already with feelings of being powerless and having been abandoned. And so that's another way of looking at childhood or in utero trauma that can create these imbalances. And if they're coming in Scorpio, and power is such a key, then they may come into the world already out of balance. And that may be where we see the kids who are, so difficult, and who, boy, the second they don't get what they want, tantrums and, wild behavior that no one can really explain.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Now we have a question. Thank you, Sherry. She's asking, is that setting off an explosion only typical if there is trauma, or is it just this sign?
Ah,
Um, you know, that's a really good question. And part of what I want to say is it's very unique to the individual person, and a lot of it depends on a lot of variables. What else is going on in the chart? Like if the planet Mars, which rules volatility and violence and war, if that planet is afflicted or negatively aspected, that person is going to be a lot more explosive than your average Scorpio. Um, and so there's that piece, but also it's going to be more important for a Scorpio who has suffered trauma to get a lot of help, because especially after an outburst, like, we all have these moments where it was like, wow, I just lost it on that guy who cut me off on the freeway, and now I have a ticket for a road rage incident. It's like, it's like often the situations of our lives hold up a mirror and reflect to us what is needed. And so the straight up simplified answer is Scorpio is going to have anger problems. If there is trauma, there's going to be more anger problems, especially they're going to be more volatile, more explosive, especially if the trauma is unaddressed or unhealed, or if what they've done to date has been helpful, but now they need to go deeper. And that's also a very delicate situation that Sobyl and I see a lot. And that's part of why her online programs are so good, because you can self-treat at any point. You buy the program, you can use it over and over and over again in the privacy of your own home as needed. And then if you take off a bit of it, but then need a little more support to get to the very bottom of something, then of course call her, or call her anyway. But like, that's the beauty of the online program, is that you can have the extra support at your fingertips whenever you need it.
exactly. I was pretty amazed, when I started doing the online work, just because I've been so used to working with people in person or by phone, and doing it on the online format. I thought, well, this should work. But I was kind of blown away at how well it worked. And what a lot of people said is, as much as they loved being with me in person,
Yeah.
right, or even on the phone, that being alone in the privacy of their own home and doing the clearing with no distraction took
Right.
deeper places. And I thought, wow, that's really powerful, because there's nobody there to watch you, see what you're doing. You're not even having the expectation of me being with you in the room or on the line.
Right.
So you get to go as deeply as you really want to or need to. So Beth, I feel like you brought up the anger, and it makes me want to jump to the piece that we were talking about before, that we actually had set as the third piece, but I'd love to go to it now, because it seems like a perfect segue.
We always do this. we skip ahead.
We make our plans and then we change them. So
Right.
yeah, so one of the pieces that called out to me was the piece on what you called it was existential emotion and women's rage. And for me, in the last 34 years, I've done so much work with women, helping them heal so that they can feel safe and present in their own bodies, and in their own bodies as women. And also, over the last 7 or 8 years, I've been guided to do more and more work with healing the cultural patterns that women carry, the ancestral patterns that women carry. And,
right.
power and control to kind of with this other piece. I mean, it's only very recently in our history that women have had any dominion over their own lives. The ability to, get a credit card, get a loan, buy a home, marry if they want to, not marry if they don't want to, have children, not have children, get educated or not. It's only very recently. So women carry, centuries of this energy of not having choice, not being in power, not being safe in their own bodies. So I would love to hear what you have to say about. Oh, and I have to share this because it really touched me. You said you said Freud was really wrong in labeling women as having penis envy when what they really wanted was power and control and a seat at the table and dominion over their own lives. So I'd love to hear you go into more depth about this and especially how it relates to Scorpio.
Okay. I love this. The first thing I want to say is just that women are everybody's target market. They're more likely to seek healing. They're more likely to benefit from it. They're more likely to try different things. They're more likely to recognize. They have a greater ability to just be honest with themselves about like, hey, I'm in pain. I'm not happy. I'm depressed. The tricky part is most people forget or didn't even know in the first place that depression is anger turned inward. And so one of the first things I always want to validate and reassure people is that, if you are depressed, yes, there's a grief piece, there's a sorrow piece, there's a fear piece, but the biggest piece is anger. And like, let's build a container for you so that you can stop turning your anger in on yourself. And if a Scorpio does that, it's going to be much more destructive to themselves than other people would do.
Why is it true? Why is it true that it's more destructive for Scorpio?
Because of the power and the violence and the rage. Like Scorpio goes from angry to rage in like 4 seconds, if. And especially because Scorpio rules sex, and women are more likely to be sexually violated and all of us are sexually violated at some point. If it's an inappropriate comment, if it's an inappropriate look, if it's a workplace incident, if it's, groping, but most of us have something before the time we graduate from high school. And our society has failed to stop normalizing that, and in an effective way so it stops happening. It's better, again, and we're all grateful for that. But most women really struggle, especially Scorpio women, with the depths of that violation or violations, plural, and then the ramifications of that, what that does to your sex drive. Some people, it shuts it completely down. Other people, it makes them out of control and with it and kind of oblivious to it. And then so there's that piece. And then everything that we were talking about a couple of years ago around women's rage has really been escalated now. Because of the political climate, because of rights being rolled back, because of the possibility of more rights being rolled back. And so it's really important. Again, now this is where emotional clearing is so powerful, sometimes just for functioning. One of the things that happens is that Scorpio, again, also rules politics, and the place we have the most power is local politics. But most people don't know how their city council runs, who's on their city council, who is their representative, how do agenda items get put before them. And if they're angry, if folks are angry, if folks are depressed, if folks are feeling hopeless, they can't even participate in the most meaningful way, aside from voting in the national and statewide stuff. And so, again, the emotional clearing piece is, in a lot of ways, I think, more important for those with a lot of Scorpio, especially women, than it is for for any other people. You know, the Dalai Lama says that it's going to be Western women that save the world, but Western women are going to have to calm down in order for that to happen. So let's go, girls. You know, let's do this thing.
Did he say that? I didn't know.
He said that. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
I love him for that, but it does like kind of, it's a heavy mantle, you know, it's a heavy mantle. And oh my gosh, the other thing the conversation I've been having with so many people since COVID, but especially in the last 6 months, is that as weird as the world is right now, we all incarnated with some understanding that this could happen, that this was a possibility, that it could even be a probability. Like we can't self-victimize here. We chose, for the most of us, there to come back the way we did, and come back at the time we did, because on some level we all thought we could make a difference. We all thought we had a role to play or some way we could help. And so when you clear the emotions, your natural gifts don't have any impediments anymore. You know, you can just express yourself so much more easily.
Right. And I think most people don't understand that when they're carrying stored trauma in their nervous system, when they've had things happen in the past that were so traumatic that the body retained the memory of it unconsciously, when it gets triggered, right? You let's say something happened at age 7. It was really painful. It was a really powerful experience your body held on to. Let's say a feeling of anger or fear or frustration, whatever it is. Fast forward into your adult life, something happens in your adult life on a day-to-day basis that reminds your unconscious mind of this original trauma. It literally triggers that stored emotion, wakes it up, and now that emotion is screaming into the present, and there you are having a huge, what we call a triggering reaction. You're now in a reactive state. Well, if you make any decisions,
right,
reactive state, whether you're in conversation with someone going back and forth, which is dangerous to be triggered and trying to have any kind of conversation.
Right.
But
put the phone down. Yeah.
Run out of the room. But if that choice that you're making, that decision you're making, is not really a choice, it's a reaction.
Yeah.
And the beauty of what you and I have talked about over the years is it's so wonderful for people when they get to clear those triggers out, and now things are happening around them, but it doesn't remind them of anything from the past. So they can be fully present, and now you can really choose.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the
freedom
basic things about this, that you get to choose rather than react. And if I look back at my life and I look at all these decisions that I made, how many of them were real choices, and how many of them came from that deep unconscious pain that caused me to react because of a trigger of an old emotion or because of a negative belief.
Right.
And women, especially have carried so many what we'll call mistaken or negative beliefs out of generation after generation after generation of being powerless in their own lives. So a lot of women that I've seen over the years, who come to me and they say, "Oh, I have terrible indecision," right? And I go, "Yeah, most women have a hard time with that because, for centuries they weren't allowed to decide anything about their own lives." And so now we have so-called freedom, but a lot of women still struggle with that, just making basic choices and decisions. So I would love to hear more what you have to say about, does this feel like a good time to go into the root chakra piece?
Absolutely. I was thinking that.
Plenty of time for this. That was a piece that you brought up, and I'd love to hear what you have to say about that.
Yeah. Scorpio, each sign rules a chakra, and Scorpio rules the root chakra, your very base chakra at your pubic bone, and and so if you are violated, if you are sexually violated, that chakra is going to shut down and then your emotions around that. Like people who are sexually violated often have feelings of not, because they were an object, then they don't feel like they have any worth or value other than being an object for someone else's gratification. And so they can really struggle. And then that can also turn into problems in that area. Prostate problems, uterine problems, L4, L5, S1, the lower back area. And it can be very difficult. One of the things that I see when people develop illnesses and ailments in that region is they can really struggle with the healing process and often not have the best success. And so it's really important to me, if in that area more than any other part of the body, if you're having some sort of physical afflictions, especially women, and you're not able to get the results you want from medical treatment, then definitely look at the physical, the body. And again, I believe Sobyl has a program for that, like that's just on the physical body. Is that correct?
Yeah, I have a program called Body Image and Weight. And so, it's really not about, it's not like a how to lose weight. It's not about that at all.
No.
It really is about how to get really present and okay and safe in your own body, right? It's really, it covers so many different layers of how we feel about ourselves and how we look, how we act. I mean, Body Image and Weight is a wonderful program for women and for men, but it's very much geared towards women, especially because
because we are taught that we're not allowed to be heavy. Our male partners can be heavy. I can't tell you, like in California, you go to a Christmas party or a cocktail party or a Chamber of Commerce mixer, and she looks fit, trim. She's really well put together, and he's got the golfer belly. He does not. It's so difficult for women, especially in certain areas and certain cultures, because the rules are really different. And then again, in metaphysics, weight is often affiliated with anger. Again, anger, you're turning inward on yourself, but then also insulation. Mm-hmm. Weight can be, for super sensitive people, carrying the extra weight is like a literal firewall between you and other humans, so that you have some sort of way of like protecting yourself energetically, physically, emotionally from the toxicity or the difficulty with other humans.
Right. And the unwanted attention. So, right. So if a woman is really, powerful and centered and at ease in her own body, right? Then she's okay with whatever attention she gets. But a lot of times, as you say, that weight is a way to keep that unwanted attention away. Yeah. And you mentioned today something about women who end up with the big belly, and we were talking about connected to liver. This is a liver gallbladder imbalance, and it is partly physical, but there we go. What are the liver gallbladder emotions? Anger, resentment, frustration, indecisiveness, depression, emotional repression, like all those emotions held in. It's not safe to express them. Feeling galled, stubborn, and all the negative beliefs. These are all liver gallbladder connected. So women who are trying to lose weight, they're trying to do everything they can, and they keep dealing with, let's say, an area of their body that will not respond. 9 times out of 10, it's got an emotional base, and clearing out that stored emotional trauma will then, again, be the key that unlocks that. Again, I never, in all the years I've worked with women in weight, I've never said, we want to fix the weight from the outside. It's got to come from the inside. It's got to come from really finding that balance, really finding that centering, letting go of anything that's been, really painful emotionally. So thanks, Beth. I love that whole section on women. And the other one that we talked about a lot, if you feel ready to move on to the final piece, is the one about let's see, where is it? conscious living, conscious dying. You said was
Oh, yeah.
big important piece for Scorpio. And for me, I started thinking about, you also said in this conscious living, conscious dying piece, part of it was that Scorpio needs to, what did you say, make peace with the requirements and limitations of the physical body, that they struggle with that. But on a grander level, you said that this was mostly about Scorpios being in denial of death and therefore denial of life, and therefore being cut off from divine, whatever divine source means to you, whether you believe in powers of the universe, whether you believe in God, whether you believe in spirit, whatever. And so people get cut off from that. And in my experience, over and over again, I have seen and cleared the feeling of being abandoned by God, literally, or abandoned by the universe, or abandoned by the world. And that could be from having lost a vanished twin. It can come from, early in life when a child comes into a family that is so unhealthy and unhappy and abusive. By the time a child is 6 or 7 and they're capable of forming negative beliefs, they'll come to the conclusion, oh, I've been left here, I'm deserted here, I've been abandoned. Even if they don't know what God is or what divine forces are, they have that sense of having been left. So you said in one of our conversations that since COVID in particular, and people facing death and fear of death more, that this piece has come up a lot. And I'd love to hear what you have to say, specifically how this relates to Scorpio's conscious living, conscious dying piece.
Yeah. Thank you. So I want to start back a little ways to give folks some context. One of the other principles of Buddhism that I love, and I'm probably going to paraphrase it poorly, but they truly believe and teach that you cannot truly live if you haven't made peace with the fact that you're going to die at some point. And that's actually part of why midlife is so difficult for Americans. Like we have a midlife crisis, it's like, because all of a sudden it's like we're having to face the thing that we're taught isn't okay. We're taught to not talk about, not think about, deny, get plastic surgery, get all these things. So get the red Corvette, get the sports car, get the,
1987 red BMW 2 convertible. And
had to do it. Yeah. It's what we do. It's just what we do. And so one of the things I love and really appreciate about the Buddhist culture, and then the way that was merged into hospice, especially in the 80s, I really first heard about it as response to the AIDS crisis, where a lot of people, before we had treatments, before we had a cure, a lot of Zen hospice centers sprung up to help those who had nowhere else to go, and that people viewed as lepers, people who were viewed as untouchable. And so there was a really powerful spiritual renaissance that came out of that. And then there was also a lot of really epic clinical research that came out of those things. You know how I get about facts. Facts are our friends. Science is my pal. And so one of the things that I've often struggled with is that, like, people become clients over business or a crisis or something they're trying to achieve. And then when death occurs, when death comes to town, as you two sang, and some bluesmen before that, it's like they call me because they trust me, and I know that terrain, and I'm not afraid, and I've got the roadmap. And so one of the things that's always been a bit of an issue is like getting everybody in the family on the same page about not being afraid of death, not being afraid of dying, mainly because, again, that's Scorpio's realm. Scorpio rules the underworld, the original god, Hades, first Hades, and then Pluto, was the Lord of the underworld. He took the dead home. That was his job. He was the Lord of the dying process in the underworld. And so on a good day, an actualized and an integrated Scorpio is going to be all over this when the issues occur, or during the course of their life. They will be interested in what different philosophies and religions and therapies and modalities have to say about being conscious in your life, about the whole of life, not just your time on this planet, what happened beforehand and what's going to happen later. And so it's a joy to watch the Scorpios that are actualized and integrated and unafraid, because again, this is their superpower, and they're the ones who can shepherd the rest of the family, the rest of the tribe through this. And then on a bad day, they're going to be the ones. And my dear mother was a classic example of this. She had 5 planets in Scorpio, and her advanced medical directive was 6 pages of spare no expense. I am not going, and it's always the personal stuff that teaches you the most, and it was just kind of like, it was very interesting. And she had deep regrets about aspects of her life. And she had a crisis of faith a long time ago that was unresolved. In clinical psychotherapy, they say whatever you do not address in your life will start to get markedly worse the further north you get from age 50. So for those of you who haven't begun the process yet, it's okay. There's still time. And yeah, they literally talk about how the more work you can do on the front side of your passing, the more peaceful and easy your death can be when your time comes, both for you, but for those around you.
Right. That's beautiful. Now, we have a little bit of time left. I want to just check. There we go.
Yeah.
I would love to hear you describe a truly actualized Scorpio, like to finish on a really positive note. And
yeah.
And even some of the classic, like what are some of the classic careers and positions in the world?
Oh.
Right?
Okay. All right. The top 3. An actualized Scorpio is going to be fearless. They or that who wrote that book? Was it Zig Ziglar? Feel the fear and do it anyway.
Right. I don't remember.
Right. Yeah. I'm not sure it's that guy, but it's like Scorpios are able to walk through fear and do the hard stuff. There's ways in which they're kind of God's Marine Corps. They're first over the wall, and they're strong, they're brave, they're fearless, but not from an ego place and not from a willful place. They're from a spiritual place. It reminds me of a lot of the soldiers in the first generation, the greatest generation during World War II, where it was like, it's my duty. Someone needs to do this. And they did it with no regrets. And a lot of the folks who survived felt like they weren't the real heroes. The real heroes were the ones who gave their lives, and who didn't come back. That always made me cry when you hear those veterans say those things. And so an actualized Scorpio is going to feel the fear. Actually, they're going to be mostly fearless, but if they have the fear, they're going to feel it and do it anyway. They'll turn it into adrenaline, and just charge. An actualized Scorpio is very powerful. And this, again, I can't say enough to women. We are taught to not be powerful. And I see this all the time in business meetings. I even had a couple of executives say this to me in the last 2 years, where it's like, oh, they always interrupt women in meetings, because women, for the most part, will demur. They will defer. They won't, hey, yo, I was talking, wait your turn. Or if, and they won't circle back around. They are easy to dominate in meetings and in business settings. And it just breaks my heart. And so it's so much better than it ever was. And thank the gods for that. But an actualized Scorpio is not going to stand for inappropriate behavior towards themselves or others. They are not conflict avoidant. Wow. They will embrace the challenge, and they are not going to be dominated. They're not going to dominate. They're just going to take a stand for righteousness, for the righteous, equal behavior that women deserve. And so for the women out there, like whether it's your banker or your broker or your, a staff meeting, it's like, be polite, be graceful and gracious, but like, don't let them run you over, because it's a plan. It's a part of like, I was shocked to have men admit this. And to me, a girl, it's like, oh God. All right. Well, thank you for saying that. And I'm learning a lot from this. And so the second thing, aside from fearlessness, is just, again, the right use of power, the strength to do the right thing in the right time, in the right way. And then the third thing is the spiritual integration, where they integrate their spiritual life into their actual behavior. They don't just talk about it. They don't wear it on their sleeve. Right. It really shows in a lot of their languaging and the choices they make and the things they say to people and that sort of thing. Does that make sense?
That's beautiful, honey. And we're right there. Right.
Oh, we are. So well done.
I'm thinking that perhaps the Dalai Lama had in mind a team of actualized
super women. Yeah. Amazons.
I love it. All right, honey. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And these are going to get put on YouTube. And so let people know how to reach you, Beth.
Okay, I have a website. It is bethmcdonaldconsulting.com. You can figure out how to call me or talk to me, email me from there. That's the quickest and easiest thing. And you're welcome to, thank you, Sherry, and you're welcome. I'm really grateful. It's an honor. It's a joy.
It is. Beautiful, Beth. Thank you so much. And I'm Dr. Sobyl Bunis. You can find me at emotionalclearinghouse.com. The YouTube channel is also emotionalclearinghouse.com. And this will be on the YouTube channel. And also, we'll be coming up with Sagittarius next.
Oh, Lord. Yeah, that's right around the corner.
Right around the corner. We don't have a date yet, but stay tuned. It will get announced on Facebook. And Beth, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much. We are both available for private sessions with people. Again, it's so valuable for me collaborating with you. You make it just a joy to work with people's, astrology and bring the emotional clearing to bear with it. It's just been a pleasure all these years, and we continue to do more and more powerful work because you and I have never stopped working on ourselves. No, that's something that people can, I hope, be inspired by. It's there's always someplace to grow, and we're on it.
We are on it.
Thank you so much, and everybody out there, it was a pleasure. Feel free to check out our other videos on and we're gonna, we started with Taurus, right?
Well, we started the astrological series with Taurus, but we started a year ago when I was in Hawaii with mental health.
COVID and mental health. COVID, but on the astrological program we started. So stay tuned. Everybody's sign is going to get covered, so don't feel left out. No FOMO for you, and we'll see you next time. Thanks again.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.